Freeze is back, baby. There are quite a few new additions coming to Genshin in the 5.6 patch, and all of them seem to bring some new life back into teams or characters that have been somewhat forgotten. Freeze teams, Electrocharged, Sageween, all of these are getting their power increased in the near future. But enough with the intros, let's hop right into these new buffs, starting with the character that will make Freeze broken. Escoffier is a top-tier Freeze support with a straightforward but powerful kit. Her skill deals cryo damage to a single enemy once per second with an ICD of every other hit. Her burst deals AoE damage and heals the entire team based on her attack. At her first ascension, her passive heals the on-field character once per second for 9 seconds after using her elemental burst, and this healing is also based on her attack. Her final passive lowers the enemy's hydro and cryo resistances depending on how many hydro and cryo characters are in the party, up to 55%. With all of this, she's easily competing with other free supports thanks to her resistance shred, competitive damage as a sub DPS, and healing that's enough to fully cap out Fiorina's fanfare without even considering any healing bonus. Escoffier's main role she will take in the team is as a defensive support. Her healing is so strong that she can nearly fully heal the entire team without any healing bonuses, while also healing the on-field character over time. But what makes her stand out from other sustain units is her 55% resistance shred for teams with only hydro and cryo characters. If we compare her to other defensive support units in freeze teams built around Ayaka, Escoffier is easily one of the best options. Her massive resistance shred lets her keep up with other supports when it comes to boosting Ayaka's damage. Plus, she's the only defensive support with a team-wide heal and a heal over time effect that is also not clunky, while additionally providing solid off-field damage. This damage isn't bad either, as Escoffier's output can range from a 2.8 at the lowest to almost a 7 at the highest, which is a big variance. This can be kind of confusing as to why it happens at first, but it makes sense when you consider who's supporting her at her peak, Shenhe and Fiorina. Shenhe's huge flat damage buff combined with her quick swap potential works wonders on Escoffier's damage. Fiorina then massively boosts Esco's damage plus the flat damage from Shenhe with her own percent damage buff. Throw in Blizzard Strayer, which helps Escoffier consistently crit without needing to build for it, plus her massive resistance shred debuff, and you've got a team capable of deleting any enemy they come across. Escoffier's ability to boost both hydro and cryo damage makes her an essential support in freeze teams. When using Ayaka as the main DPS for the team, if we pair Escoffier with Shenhe and Fiorina, her team can wipe the floor with any other Ayaka freeze comp around. Her buffs plus personal damage can increase the entire team's damage by up to 40%. This solidifies her as the best support for any freeze team, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. In my opinion, this is how niche 5-star units should be designed. If a unit's role is limited to a specific niche, they should always be the best option in that niche. Escoffier nails it with her rare resistance shred debuff, solid personal damage, and massive healing. She can fill any role in a freeze team other than main DPS, which means she's a must-have for pretty much every freeze comp, even if there are already sub-DPS, buffers, or sustain units in them. As long as there are only hydro and cryo characters in the party, she'll work perfectly, especially when alongside Fiorina and Shenhe. Next up, we have Ifa, an animo support designed to drive the electrocharged reaction. He does this while in his skill, which lets him fly around while shooting his pistol when you tap or hold the normal attack button. When these shots hit an enemy, they deal damage based on his attack, they heal based on his elemental mastery, and they will apply the animo element once every other hit. His burst groups enemies together, deals AoE animo damage, and then applies a mark to up to 4 enemies affected by pyro, hydro, electro, or cryo. The mark takes on the damage type of the element, and after a short delay, it triggers AoE elemental damage based on the mark's element. Ifa also has passives and constellations that increase the team's swirl and electrocharge damage, boosts his elemental mastery after triggering Night Soul Burst, and after using his elemental burst, grants him extra energy after hitting an enemy with his skill, and he increases the number of bullets he fires by 50% while using his hold skill. And you might have noticed that Ifa kind of sounds a bit familiar, and that's because he shares a lot of similarities with Mizuki. Both are animo catalysts, they heal their team, they scale based off of elemental mastery, and they both buff the swirl reaction. The main differences are Ifa's buffs are weaker overall and depend on other Natlan characters. Ifa's buffs can vary in strength, he can buff electrocharge damage, he has more personal damage, and he works with normal attack focused supports. However, he has no off-field presence almost at all. Despite these differences, they're close enough that if I copy and pasted my Mizuki script and then swapped Mizuki's name with Ifa's, the information presented would be like 90% accurate. They're so alike that a direct comparison just makes sense. However, since their buffs are slightly different, we'll focus on their personal damage and how well they boost team reactions. When comparing them in teams that can deal electrocharged damage, Ifa loses to Mizuki when against multiple enemies. That's because most of Ifa's damage is in small AoEs, which hurts Sucrose's performance as a driver for Electrocharge and Swirl, which both scale better when against mobs. Mizuki, on the other hand, can consistently hit multiple enemies, making her better in AoE heavy content and allowing her to keep up with Ifa even in his niche. Plus, Mizuki can be used in Hyper Bloom comps, while Ifa struggles there due to his lack of buffs for reactions beyond Electrocharged and his small AoEs. Mizuki's ability to boost swirl damage and hit multiple enemies will usually make her a better choice for those situations, but Ifa's personal damage multipliers are higher, which allows him to still compete with Mizuki when against single target content. Another comparison to mention is with Sucrose, another 4-star Anemo driver. She's great for boosting elemental mastery for the team, but the stat she buffs comes with diminishing returns. This contrasts with Ifa's buffs, which do not scale poorly, but instead can vary depending on team comp. At max potential, Ifa usually outperforms Sucrose when buffing Electrocharge damage, but if his buff is only half of the cap, he only outshines her when the unit he's buffing has 900 plus elemental mastery. Because most sub DPS will not have that much elemental mastery, Ifa needs to always have his buff as close to the cap as possible, else he will be nowhere near as good as Sucrose is. Even then, his buff doesn't do a lot for Ifa and his teams because Electrocharged isn't in the best spot right now, especially compared to Hyper Bloom, which is more consistent and stronger overall. Unlike Ifa, Sucrose is not bound to only Electrocharge, as she can buff multiple reactions, including Hyper Bloom, while also increasing the damage percent of one of the elements she swirls, making her the better of the two in almost all situations. While Ifa might also take the role of a defensive support, I still believe that his kit is incredibly underwhelming, and in my opinion, he deserves a full-on rework. While it does provide more damage for teams that focus on Electrocharge damage, this type of kit is not valuable right now. It only works in one specific and underwhelming niche, and this kit requires Ifa to take the spot of a high damaging main DPS. On paper, Ifa does look better than Mizuki in some ways, but in practice, Mizuki appears to be much more reliable and versatile. She doesn't have fluctuating buffs, she takes less field time, and she works in many different comps, not just one. This kit is underwhelming due to lack of numbers, application, and synergy with the AoE elements it is supposed to buff. Instead, this kit seems more like it is meant to be a test run that will be power crept at some point in the future by someone else. Most likely another pale 5-star medium-sized girl who shows more skin than clothes, and that we first hear about the patch before they drop.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Characters are not the only new additions we are receiving, as 2 new weapons are also on the way. The 5-star Symphonist of Scents is up first. This polearm comes with an average base attack and crit damage substat. It boosts the user's attack by 12% and then gives an extra 12% when they're off field. On top of that, whenever the user heals an ally, everyone healed and the user, even if they weren't healed, gets a 32% attack buff for 3 seconds. You heard that right. A new support polearm. Finally. It's been years. This is what makes Symphonists stand out, as there are so few support polearms in the game right now. Most polearm supports are stuck with using the Ifa VS Lance, which is great for its energy recharge, solid base attack, and a passive that reduces the entire team's energy needs. It's perfect for all supports in every comp except when alongside Ayaka, and it gives the user such strong stats that you only need to build crit to deal damage. The only other support polearm is Moonpiercer, which gives a 32% attack buff to 1 unit, but it's restricted to only Dendro teams. The Symphonist of Scents, on the other hand, offers the same attack buff for the on-field unit as long as the user heals at least once every 3 seconds. This makes it an excellent pick for almost any polearm healer, since it can give your main DPS a 32% attack boost with almost 100% uptime. Escoffier, Yao Yao, Mika, and Chevreuse are the main beneficiaries of this weapon. Yansan could technically use it too, but she has long gaps between healing, so she'll always prefer her current options. Mika and Yao Yao are a bit in the same boat. They still get good use of other polearms, like for instance, Favonius Lance for Mika, especially when paired with the Energy Hog Eula, and Yao Yao with Moonpiercer, which offers the same buff. So while this weapon is great and one of the only support polearms out there, it's really only a significant upgrade for Escoffier, Chevreuse, and even a C6 Zhongli, where it becomes his best in slot weapon as long as his shield is taking damage. In the end, though, I can't really recommend this polearm, as unless you're actively using one of these 3 characters, this weapon might just end up sitting on your account as a trophy. A pretty trophy, but just a trophy. The sequence of Solitude is the last item to mention. It's a 4-star bow with an average base attack, but more importantly, it's the first 4-star bow to have HP percent as its substat. This is pretty game-changing for potential future bow characters. But then you get to its passive, which provides an instance of AoE physical damage once every 15 seconds, scaling with the user's HP. And yeah, it's pretty underwhelming. However, this weapon has some value simply because it's rare substat. The only other HP bows out there are 2 limited 5-star bows and a 3-star one with a pretty meh passive effect. So even though this weapon might lack a large HP stat and a strong passive, it still stands out because the only other free HP scaling bow is pretty bad. Its usefulness is diminished even further though, as sadly Sadly, there are only 3 bow characters in the game that scale with HP, and one of them is an energy-hungry pure support, so realistically, only 2 characters would actually benefit from this bow, Yelan and Sijuin. Let's start off with Yelan. Yelan is an HP scaler who also needs a lot of energy recharge to work. Her best 4-star bow right now is Favonius Warbow, which gives her tons of energy recharge and also generates energy for the entire team. The new bow, on the other hand, gives more HP and extra AoE damage, but at the cost of losing all of that energy regen. This makes sequence worse for her in single target situations. However, since Yelan has very little AoE damage, the extra AoE damage from this bow could actually make it better for her when facing multiple enemies. Despite that, you are still losing out on the extra energy generation Favonius Warbow would grant the team, which would allow everyone to build more offensive stats, therefore increasing the team's overall damage. So while it is a solid second option if you want to swap from Favonius, it's still not her best in slot. It's more of a backup option if Yelan is not using Favonius Warbow for whatever reason. Now Sijuin is a different story. Her elemental burst is a DPS loss unless she's the main DPS, which still isn't ideal for most teams, so she doesn't desire any energy. Instead, HP is her best stat for increasing her personal damage, healing, and her flat damage buff. Right now, Sijuin doesn't really have a best non-5-star bow because of this. Favonius is okay for some energy generation, but isn't ideal. Sacrificial bow is useful for constant healing and off-field elemental skill buffs. Recurve bow is her only free-to-play option for HP, and Viridescent Hunt is decent for the extra grouping and crit rate. So when you compare this new bow to her current options, it's pretty clear that the sequence of Solitude is now her best 4-star option. The most surprising part is that this bow actually outperforms her signature weapon, which is used solely as an off-field healer. Her scalings are so underwhelming in this role that the extra scaling from this bow makes it the best option for her when used as a pure support. This bow gives her so much extra power in this role that it makes her signature weapon less appealing, which is something I didn't think could ever happen, honestly. Despite this, I still cannot recommend it because of its lack of value. The problem with Sequence of Solitude is that there aren't many characters who would actually want to use it. The only one who gets an upgrade from it is a Fiorina-focused support. Most other characters either don't scale with HP, or they would prefer more supportive options, making this weapon lackluster overall. But those are just my initial thoughts on these new additions. Now I want to hear yours. Which addition do you think is the biggest buff? What do you think of Escoffier? Do you think Ifa is stronger than I suspect? Are you planning on getting the new support polearm, or are you looking to upgrade your Sijuin? Tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. But with that, I will get out of your hair. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye bye!